Alright guys, here we are with the counter shaft disassembled from before, and I'm still fighting a cold, so pardon the voice. And let me squirt this out. Let's see here. Clean this up a little more. Shaft, I just wanted to make sure the counter shaft doesn't have any dust or debris, or there's some oiling holes. See if you can zoom in on this. There's some oiling holes here for the bearings. Make sure they're not blocked. These look to be open. This one over here had this one here had a little junk in it. So blew that out. The shaft is hollow. You can see that. Hollow at this end. So you can blow some brake cleaner through there and make sure all the splines don't have any kind of debris. You can also kind of use your hand to go over these splines and make sure you don't feel any burrs. If you do, take the time to file them and clean it. Make sure there's no filings left over. So just make sure the shaft's clean and feel the gears here with your bare hands. I wouldn't worry about the corners so much if there's a little sharp edge, but it should be smooth otherwise, and nothing in the bottom of the gears. Make sure if you're cleaning up from any damage that you absolutely make sure this is clean. So, as with cleanliness and going over your gear sets, this one was already in good shape, and all I did was disassemble to add some development gears and to update the synchronizer rings with carbon versions. But same thing in the reverse gear. Make sure it's doesn't have any significant burrs. These gears are black in appearance because they've been cryo treated and REM polished, and they also have an oil absorbent coating added to them. That was kind of the first round experimentation to see if we can get some more strength and durability out of these gears, and that didn't work out. Fourth gear popped just like the other ones did from the factory. So the cryo treatment didn't do anything, and I think there's some value in the REM polishing and the absorbent coatings, but I'll probably talk about that later on another video. Anyhow, this ring simply just installs over the top of counter shaft in no particular order, just like that. If you haven't already lubed up your assembly, make sure that you get some of your tranny fluid, stick it in a clean container. That way you can kind of run your fingers and dip your parts and get them coated. These are already lightly coated from before. Here's a gear bearing, so we'll drop that over the top here. This is the next gear. First gear. So again, I'm just going to go through and make sure everything's okay, feels okay, looks okay. The gear cones, make sure they look in smooth and good shape. There's ways to polish these back up if they've got some kind of wear from the previous synchronizers. This one looks pretty good shape. There's no particular orientation for this because these two parts are independent, separated by bearings. So this just drops on, and you can see how they run independent. This particular gear ring is splined for the shaft, so it moves with the shaft, and this one here spins on the bearing. This one here has some recessed holes for the synchronizer. Triple cone synchronizer. There's a cone that fits inside there. These are the parts as they come from Synchrotech. There's a carbon lined ring. Here's the cone. So there's a cone inside here, a cone here, and a cone right here. 3 cones. So much like a disc brake rotor and pad, here's your pad material, here's your rotor material. All they've done is they've taken one pad and rotor, basically a cone, another pad and rotor, basically another braking surface, and you add a third braking surface. So the triple cone synchronizers have a lot more surface area to brake, so they can slow this big heavy gear down quickly. So what we have to do is get these tangs, if you will, on the second cone aligned with the holes on this gear. And I need to wet these parts because they're new. So I'm going to just dip my finger in here and add some to the braking surface. I'm told that these parts, when they're new, will be stiff, and it takes a little bit of time to break in these carbon line synchros. So I'm curious to know what that feels like when switching gears. So we'll put this, let's see here, it's inside of here and slide this on like that. And I've already wetted these. I'll put this. Oh, also, you'll see there's some indents here, and those line up with these here. No other particular order from what I understand. You just spin it on until it goes on. That's it. And if you apply light pressure down on this outer ring, it'll stop. When you lighten up the pressure, it should release and spin. Just like that. I should point out also that in the synchronization, this brass ring aligns with the teeth on the side of the gear. And this is the sleeve and the hub. And how this works is torque will transfer from the gear through those teeth aligned with the synchronizer in this hub by this sleeve. The sleeve is actually what joins those teeth on the side of the gear with this hub, and then the hub transfers torque through these splines to the shaft and then out this gear here to the ring gear on the final drive and the differential. So the input shaft comes from the engine, transfers through the gear, through the side, into the hub, courtesy of this sleeve locking the hub and the side of the gear together, and then out through the shaft, through the final drive gear, out to the ring and pinion, and then into the differential and out to the axles. That's how that works. So when you're stripping gears, you're not stripping these gears when you miss a shift. You're actually changing the geometry between the side gears and the sleeve. This is where the wear is going to be on the ends of these points and into those points, and and these teeth right here. These are not the ones that grind. These are the ones that grind. It happens to also be that these hubs and sleeves are, I believe, a softer material, so they wear quicker. So this is what's probably going to wear. And if you're grinding gears and can't get good smooth gear engagement, it's likely because you've damaged the tips of these and created burrs so the sleeve can't slide easily onto the hub, and then you can't transfer the energy to the shaft. So you'd probably end up having to replace your sleeves. But you can't order those separate, so there's the problem. You have to get a whole set, and that's expensive. So let's keep going. So now we've got this gear assembly, and we need to put the hub on. And according to the picture in the manual, the high spot in the cross section of this hub has to go up. So what we'll do here is pull out the phone as a good reference. See if I can dry my hands off a little bit. And we're going to show this. I don't know if it's going to show up from LCD to LCD, but you'll see the profile here. has to go up when it goes down onto this synchro assembly. So there's the hub. There's no particular orientation of this other than respecting this feature. So this recess right here, or this opening slot, has to go onto this feature right here. And there's several features around. You can see the shape here. It's pretty easy. Once you start to spline this on the shaft, you can spin this to line it up. So I'll show you that. So this slides on, doesn't have to be pressed. You're going to want to line up this with this right here, and see how that slides right there. So you can see it doesn't need a pressed, and this won't go on if it's not aligned. It has to be aligned. Drops right on. Everything's moving real good. These are the times when you really want to start paying attention to how things feel. So right now the carbon line synchronizer ring is dragging on this gear cone. Not fully worn in, lubricated, no pressure, just the weight of the hub. The sleeve has some geometry that has to be respected. That's right here. And then that cross section here has to look like that going down. It's my experience that the sleeve, so here's that cross section geometry right here. This has to go down onto that hub. There are certain positions on this hub that the sleeve feels smoother. So take your time and feel for that. Oh, I almost made a mistake. Almost. If you're reusing these synchronizers, it probably would be okay. I almost forgot. These little rings have to transfer from the old set to the new set. Wow. We wouldn't have figured that out till we had it all installed. Things weren't shifting right. Take this back off. Goes over the top here. Woo! Good catch. And this helps. This is that snapping feeling when you're at the top of your shift and it snaps in. So we're going to put that on, put this back on in the same order we had it before. There. And then the hub. And keep that high profile right there going up. Let's double check that. Yep. That'll slide on like this. Spin the gear. Get that to slip down. And now you can see the assembly with the gear, the synchronizer, triple cone synchronizer. We got the spring. We have the hub on, aligned with that slot. That's what it feels like. Very smooth. So now, go with the sleeve. Got this profile going down. You also want to check the grooves for any excessive wear. What does that look like? I don't know. This is only my 4th or 5th time tearing into these transmissions, but I would imagine if it was highly worn, you would know. It should be obvious. Again, the tops of these things will feel kind of sharp, but as long as they're not rounded over, if they look like the top of a house, that's good. If they're rounded over because you've been learning how to drive a standard and grinding gears because you're not depressing the clutch all the way down, that could be a problem. So let's see if we can figure out where this sleeve is happy. So just keep incrementing it. Oh, hey, it went on. This way it went on. And see how that locks? It locks that gear now. Now this gear, oh, hang on. Oh, maybe that's not the right position. Let's try it again. That was just the synchronizer pressing on it. That tricked me. So that was one position. And we'll keep going around until we find another. Oh, here. So that's pressing on the synchronizer, but it's not lining up properly. Let's try it again. There's another. There. See? So see, there's several positions by rotating that this sleeve will go over the hub, but it will not engage with the synchronizer, the brass synchronizer ring. It has to line up with these features right here, and if you could see these features, they allow, so they're kind of a roof shaped, they allow that sleeve to fall on either side of that tooth and then start to line up with the gear below it. So there's a position for the sleeve to fit over these that's very precise, and even though it gets close and it makes it look like it's going to work, the final test is actually snapping it over that little steel ring, right? You heard the snap there, and now this gear is locked to this shaft just like that. Works perfect. And if you pulled it up, it should pull up relatively easy, albeit it has to snap past this again, so you'll feel a snap just like you would in your hand on the shift rod. And you can see here that gear is free to spin, albeit the synchronizer is still kind of stiff and it's doing what it's supposed to do. The ring, if it was on its side, it spins much easier. This is how it's actually installed. With it installed this way, there's some weight of these components pressing on the synchronizer cone and making it a little bit more difficult to spin by hand. So that's great. So now we can add the next set of components, which is going to be this gear right here. And again, we're going to look at this cone surface, and it looks to be in good shape. There's some of the coating that I had installed wore off. This is why I'm not ready to comment on the oil absorbent coating. I think that it puts particles into the oil, and I think that the oil should be changed if you're going to put the REM black finish on these parts. I don't think it harms the transmission, but I would prefer to do a fluid change after, say, 500 miles of driving if you're going to do the oil absorbent coating. So this feature here and these gear, the side teeth, tell you which orientation this gear is supposed to be going on next. This cone is supposed to interface with the next set of synchronizers, and this sleeve is going to switch between first gear and second gear. So let's get these parts lubricated, just like this. And this. There we go. And we know that the synchronizer has to go on first in this case. So just like before, we need the ring on this one, just like that. And put this down because, and just like before, we're going to want to slide this up and down the sleeve to make sure we've got it fit on there correctly, and it feels like it is. And also, let's see here. Yep, that feels good. And then we have this ring. It goes inside. It's got the tangs on it that have to fit under the other gear. And this doesn't have any orientation yet. It's free to spin in there right now. And then we have this piece, which has to go down, and it locks in. It locks in with these features that are inside there, so you have to spin it around until it drops. And there it goes. When it's done right, this should almost be flush. Almost. So far we're doing pretty good. I've already felt all these gears, but they all look good, feel good. There's no debris. Everything feels slick. The cones feel smooth. This has to go down. You'll have to spin this around until you get these features to drop into these holes. There's no particular pattern. So there. Again, we're going to spin it around until it drops. And now you're locked in. And now we'll do another test. If I hold this up a little bit, it's locked in and it won't turn. So that's good. Here's the bearing assembly. And you can see on these spacers how they have the holes and oiling grooves inside here. Make sure those are clean and no debris. Make sure the bearings are good. Everything should run smooth. And then that just drops in here. And that keeps that gear centered on and concentric with the shaft. Yeah, everything's starting to feel good. That's not snapping. So I'm not sure if I like that. It doesn't go on. So let me try it again just to be sure. But again, this is where you get to learn a lot. It's locking. What's going on here? Should be no orientation of the spacer either. The spacer should just go on. There it goes. Tight fit. So the detent spring, hang on a minute. I think we talked about this, didn't we? This has to go, I thought this had to go down. Let's check the phone again. Yep. That has to go down. That cross section shows this sleeve having to go down, not up. I had it backwards. So we're going to put it back on and check it again. And this, well, we can take this one off. Good thing we're checking these things. Yeah, that's working real good. Yep. Okay, so now we'll put this synchronizer back on. It's working the way it's supposed to. And then we'll put this gear back on. Come on. Oh. Well, we'll put that on here in a minute. Let that drop down. That's confirmed. There we go. Tight fit. So now, there. And that's how it's supposed to, that's how it's supposed to be. See, this is locked. Then you push it down, that's locked, and this is, oops. This is free to spin. And this is locked. Oop, and this is locked. So the detent springs in your transmission case, that's what keeps the shift fork where it is. So the sleeve doesn't slide around. So upgrading your detent springs helps keep these things from vibrating loose and accidentally coming out. So that feels pretty smooth in the sideways direction. It's not a lot of effort. So I like this. This is good. Everything feels good. So as we start to add more gears, we're going to get back to the manual just as a go by. So we've already got that gear set up with the triple cone synchronizer, bearing spacer, gear spacer, and bearing, and then second gear. So now let's go for third gear, which third gear has to be the larger of these two gears. These are the development gears. So one's going to be smaller than the other. So this is like a tree. Starts out big and the gears go down in size. Opposite is the main shaft, where you're going to have the little gear at the bottom and the gears are going to get bigger as they mesh. There's the ratios between the two. So in this particular gear, we want third gear to be pointed up. So I've already inspected these as much as I can, and they feel good, they look good, they measure okay, and so relative to the stock gear, they measure okay. So we're going to install these right now. I don't know if we have to press this one on, I can't remember, but it just goes on like this. So it does look like we have to press it on. So to make sure that you're on a spline, you want to make sure that it doesn't spin, it's not at some funky angle. You really want to pay attention, and you might want to do it a couple times to make sure that when you start to put these on, you have to feel for it. You want to spin it lightly until it catches and it drops down ever so slightly. You really want to make sure that you're starting these splines relative to these splines. You want to make sure they're engaged correctly, because the press is unforgiving. It can almost like cross-threading a screw. You can damage the starting points of these splines if you don't establish where they begin. So that feels pretty good, and it dropped down. Yep, I can almost push it down a little bit by hand, but I can't. So this is it. We're going to stop now and head on over to the press and see what we can do to get that gear pressed on all the way. You need a lot of precision, and we're going to see, make sure this is tight. It's tight. We're going to try this by hand first and see how easy this gear slides on. There we go. So we're just going to try to push this gear down. It's going down nice and easy, all just by hand. I like to do this first just with my thumb and hand strength until the effort is too high. I want to know that I'm not putting a lot of pressure on this. It kind of tells me if I'm doing it wrong. So now it's getting a little stiffer. There's more splines engaged. So we're just going to help it along with this. Again, this isn't much pressure. And we're going to bottom out effectively. And what I like to do is just make sure the gear is free to spin. And when I start to feel it kind of back, so it's getting harder now. I'm just going to, just put a little bit of pressure on here. Should be fairly smooth. That spins just fine. And that's it for that gear. Looks good. So now we're going to back off on the pressure. Just like this. Lift that up. There we go. Tighten it up for the next one. Take this off, set it aside. That's what it looks like. Again, everything works. This is connected to the shaft now. And it's the main shaft gear that's going to have a bearing on it. These gears actually all stay engaged and spin all the time. It's the synchronizer sleeves and the hubs and the synchronizers themselves, and then the side teeth on these gears that actually engage and disengage the two shafts. That's how they talk. They talk through the sleeves, hubs, synchronizers, and teeth on the side. and then the power transfers and torque transfers to these gears through those components to that shaft and out the way that I described it before. Very simple. Let's go grab another gear and see what happens. So in this particular case, there's a fourth gear. We're going to go over here. So we just put that gear on with this profile sticking up. The next gear, even though you can't see it, has the profile, raised profile, sticking down, pointing down. So that's how we're going to put this gear on. Right. And like before, we want to line this thing up. See? Yeah, oh, that's nice. So that slides on to a point and it kind of stops. So I'm not going to be able to press that on with this without lowering this this rig. So let's get to doing that real quick. So all I did was lower the platform on this. I don't know what you call it, but I'm calling it a platform. That gets us back in the range of using this little spacer, if you will. Get it kind of lined up with the rod here. Make sure this is snug. It is. Again, I'm just going to go down here. Sometimes I'll put a little plate in there. Excuse me. We'll put this in here. And I got some scrap laying around, just so you don't have to work this hydraulic jack too many pumps. Get it slid over a little bit. Looks like it's not aligned. There we go. There we go. There. So again, we'll do it by hand first. Make sure it's going on nice and smooth. Feels like it is. It's moving real nice. Got a little ways to go. There we go. It is feeling pretty good, but my finger's getting wore out, so we'll go over here. Let's do it. Just take your time. Everything's fine. And you can see that this part here and this part here are not splined. Only the region that's around the gears are splined. So this piece right here seems like it won't go past this, but it will, because this is a smooth bore and clearanced. So it'll go right over that. And these two parts here will make contact. So you can put some pressure into it just like you did over here. Maybe as I learn how to edit videos more, I'll speed this part up. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. I'm actually using two cameras now, so advancing things. I got a GoPro on the right side of me and a digital SLR on the left side. There we go, almost there. That gap is closing and we're making contact. The pressure's starting to build at my hand. I don't really need to go any further. It's certainly there. We'll double check. There's no binding. A little bit more. We're good. Light pressure. The return springs on the shot press. I'll take this back up out of my way. We'll take this bar out. Be careful not to knock stuff over. Not sure what that would look like if this whole assembly dropped off. There. Now let's grab another gear. So on the next one here, it goes up, just like what it says here. So we got that one. Let's see that. This is the one, and this is the one we just put on, which is fourth gear. So the next one goes up which is 5th gear, and 6 gears on the top, of course. Oh, that's not good. Alright, let's get that back in. There we go. So like before, I've inspected these gears, everything's okay. And these go up. So we're gonna stick it on here. It slides on quite easily. I'm surprised. And let's see here. Oh, now that went in real nice. And like I said, I sized the, I found some stock tube, square tube that fits these diameters. So this all worked out real well. I mean, I've done this a few times, so I'm not surprised it works. But if you're sourcing materials to do this at home, there's many different ways to make up these spacers, these adapters, if you will. And this is the way I did it because I have a welder and saws, and I can do metal work here. So, okay. Looks like we're aligned reasonably well. And there we go, make contact. So we're going to do it again, light pressure, your finger. In the near future, I have another transmission with cap gears. Those aren't in development, and I'll be replacing 5th gear. I only have 3rd and 4th in my other transmission that I'm running right now. But he's working on 5th gear for me right now. This gear's been a little more stubborn, so yeah, but it's still well within the pressure range that I think is okay to continue. You can hear how the gear is dragging on the splines a little bit by the sound of the shot press. That's okay. It's okay. And we got some spacing here. Let me get this other camera. We have some spacing here between this gear and this gear. I don't know if it can be seen so easily, but we're going to close that gap. And this is kind of what I'm going to look for when I'm coming up on the pressure that I should be expecting. Oh, there it goes. It's starting to build. I'm going to just add a little bit more and make sure. And that's it. We'll back off. That. Set up a little bit because I need a little extra height. And tighten that up for the next time. Take this off. Again, this gear works very smooth, so let's go get 6th gear. In this gear, according to the manual, this points down. This gear right here points down. That's it. Let's put that on. And then we have a shim, the bearing, and then the bolt. Again, I've already done my inspection. These all have a light film of oil on them already. I'm going to take my time here and feel when it drops. It feels good there, but it feels good there. Yeah, it feels good right there. It feels good right there. Yeah, that all feels pretty good. This might be too high. Let's see. Oh. Yeah, I think that might let us get in there. Maybe. Oh. So let's pick up this press a little bit. There's a little bit to be had at the top. Just a little bit to be had at the top. Now this one, there we go. Oh, perfect. Look at that. Look at that. Now, I've heard of and seen somebody else who's building one of these right now, who will remain anonymous, has pressed this on a little crooked. It's not that big of a deal, because if you recognize it's going on a little bit crooked, you could just stop and then reconfigure this equipment, pull that gear off, check for any burrs, file them down if there are any, and then try a little bit different approach to making sure this is level. So my equipment is pretty level all around and shouldn't be a problem pressing this on straight, but it's something to really pay attention to when you get started, that it goes on level. You do not want to bind this up, and it looks like it's going on level, so take your time and make sure it just continues to go on nice and easy. There's a little bit of light pressure on this one. It's not that big of a deal, well within my experience of being okay. And the same thing here, there's a space right here. We're going to wait until that's gone, and then just put a little pressure behind it to make sure it's all the way seated. Very simple. And there it is. So we're going to put a little pressure on it just to make sure it's tight. Good. That's it. Take this off. And there we go. And then all we do is, I think we have to press the bearing on too. Let's go get it and see what we got to do. Here's the shim. In this particular case, it's a 1.46. I believe this is going to be millimeters. Clearly it's not inches. 1.46. So there's no real orientation for that. It looks like there's a little feature here for this to sit on to capture it and center it. So while there's no orientation for up and down, I would make sure that that's concentric, meaning the center of each of them is aligned. This bearing should feel smooth. You could look at the balls for any wear, any spalling is what they call it. If the hard coating on the ball bearings is peeling away, that would be something that you'd replace the bearing. You'd almost feel things kind of skipping, feel chunky and dirty. Make sure this groove is in good shape, because there's a snap ring in the transmission case that actually holds this, and in some cases it has to lift the shaft, the counter shaft. It has to sit. The counter shaft is supported at the top. When the transmission's oriented for assembly, disassembly in the car, it's mounted on the side like this, and then the gears run it that way. But the end of the counter shaft hovers over the clutch case inside of a needle bearing, and so the spacing and all the gear stack relationships, gear to gear, all the heights of these gears is established with that spacer or shim, and this snap. Okay, so here we go. All I've done is put a little flat bar here, a little socket just to make up the space, raise the platform. Looks fairly aligned. I'll make sure that we're got the jack tightened up. Since this isn't splined, should go on fairly smooth. Again, make sure that you've got this going on kind of level. And hey, look at that. Oh, look at that. Just fine. There's a little space down there, a little pressure, and we're good. Roll that by hand. No big deal. Take the socket off. You'll see from here how it looks. And another view from the GoPro. Yeah, alright. Alright, so here we go. To put that bolt in, I've got a vise with some aluminum, here we go, some aluminum pads, so it doesn't slip on me. tighten that up a little bit, just a snug. Tighten these up. They look pretty tight. That's pretty tight. And we've got our hex socket. Well, it goes in here. So make sure the bolt's in good shape, threads aren't damaged. These are left-handed threads, not right-handed threads. So to spin it on, you have to essentially loosen it. I think everybody's smart enough to understand that. I think there's some people talking about putting thread Loctite or something on here. I don't. This thing's torqued to 87 foot-pounds. I would say that's locking the threads. And torque wrench. Here's mine. SK. It's calibrated. And we'll see if we can find 87 foot-pounds thereabouts. And it'd be helpful if I had glasses on, but we'll get close enough. Foot-pounds were just under 90, so we're right there. There. And again, this you have to put it in the loosening mode. There we go. Just going to loosen it. There we go. There. That's it. The shaft is built. Nothing to it. Okay, we're back. This is the main shaft. We've already got on the main shaft integrated into it the first gear and second gear. So what we'll be adding is third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear, and sixth gear, of course. And let's see here. So we can go ahead and add the third gear. It's going to be this guy. Let's see. Nope. Going to be the smaller one. So this will be the smallest gear. And we've already inspected these gears. This one's already got some oil on it, so that's good. So we'll go ahead and put a bearing on it. This will be the bearing here. I'm going to put a little more lubrication on this, a little more transmission fluid. And this gear has to go with the cone up, like this. And we're going to put a synchronizer on it. Synchronizer ring. This one's already coated in fluid. It's got the spring on it. Put that down like this. There's no real orientation for that. And we've got this hub here. There is some orientation of this hub. You'll see kind of the U-shaped slot. So this always, the slot opens up. So we're going to put it in that orientation. The synchronizer ring also has a feature on it that has to fit into this opening here. And this will just slide down like this and make sure those things line up just like that. Everything works nice and smooth. And then we can go ahead and put the next gear on. This would be fourth gear. This one's already lubricated. But let's see here. So this one, we have to have the synchronizer on first. And the synchronizer would go, this one's got the spring on it. This one would have to go with the cone enlarging, and
that feature here on the ring has to go in the opening, just like that. And then we go and put this this particular gear on. Make sure it's lubricated. And again, there's no particular orientation for that. And then we have a distance collar. Looks just like this. This one has been machined so that it fits this development gear, which is a little bit tall. So I had to cut down one side of this collar here so that the hub, or this the spacer here, can bottom out on the hub. And let's see if, so I think it's this side here. Yes, there we go. So we'll put the bearing in. This, that works. Oh, good thing we're thinking. Got to put the sleeve on. So the sleeve has, I don't know if it can be seen here so easily, but it has one tooth, if you will, that is short, and that one has to go up and line up with this U-shaped slot here. It has to go down inside that, so we'll line it up. Probably be easier without the synchronizer ring. We'll put that in after. There we go. That's how you know that works. Put this back in so it lines up here. And then the gear. Bearing's already on there. There we go. It feels pretty good. That's a good test for the sleeves. The gear turns nice. This gear turns nice. And then we'll put the distance collar on. And this still spins, so that's good. And if we put it on the other way, it doesn't spin, it drags. This is not a typical assembly. The typical assembly, you wouldn't have to do any machining, and this development gear needs to have an adjustment before it goes into production. But that's an aside. If you had a stock gear replacement or a well-developed gear, you wouldn't have to do this extra step. We'll put the other bearing on. It's lost some of its lubrication, so we'll add some more. Just like that. We've got another gear here. So this is going to be 5th gear. We'll slide that. Let's see. This one has to go with the cone up. Just like that. Okay. And then you need to put another synchro ring. I'm going to put a little bit more tranny fluid on it. Again, this doesn't have any orientation other than these features here have to find their way into this particular hub. And on this hub, it does have some orientation. The longer side of the hub cross section has to go down. Check the manual for that. This hub will have to be pressed on, but I think what we can do, because it's not very tight, so we can tap it on. So let's see here. Just put a big socket on there. That's about as far down as it goes. That hub should bottom out on the splines, and we're obviously going to be checking all of that. For the bearing that goes on top will have to be pressed, and so we'll put a little bit of pressure on the shop press to get that on. And then this particular sleeve has some orientation. There's some teeth here that stick out further than the others, and they'll align themselves. There are some features here where they're deeper, so you'll see where the two stick out need deeper grooves to go in, just like that. Pretty much only goes on one way. In some cases you can clock this thing, it'll go a couple different ways, maybe 3 ways. You can find which one feels the smoothest. This feels pretty good. And then of course we have another synchro. We'll put some fluid on that. And that goes on with the cone opening up. And that has this feature on it that has to fit into the hub. And then we have another gear to put on. This one's got some tranny fluid already on it. We'll set that in there. It's got no real orientation. The cone side has to go down, of course. And then we've got a bearing here. This one's already got some lubrication. I'll put some more on it. Just like that. Don't be shy with it. This doesn't have any real orientation. It can go either end. Just like that. It feels pretty good. And you know what? Just for the heck of it, why don't we try the sleeve, as I mentioned, in a couple different orientations, so we could see which one feels a little smoother. I mean, ultimately I'd think that they would feel the same, but I mean, that one feels a little bit smoother, so let's try that. Put that on like this, put this on like this, put that on like this. Yeah, it's a hair better. We'll see. I think it feels, I don't know. Just play with it a little bit. It is somewhat forgiving, but I think that of 3 choices for indexing the sleeve, you be the judge. It feels a little better in that location. I don't think it really matters that much. If it can move at all. It has roughly the same effort as this. I would say it's gonna feel just fine on the hand when you actually go to shift gears. So that's all there is to it. And then we have a bearing. And the bearing has orientation as well. The cross section would have the part of the metal that sticks past the bearing. It goes down. There's also like a plastic or brown piece up here that would go up. That's it. And then that of course has to get pressed on, and make sure that it presses on nice and true. Don't start pressing it on if it's going to tilt. Go ahead and pull it off, reorient it on the shop press, and go ahead and press it home. These are all hard points that are connecting all of this together, so when you go to press this bearing on, you'll bottom it out and you'll put a little bit of pressure on it to make sure it's not moving anymore. And it should be good. So let's go over to the press and finish putting the bearing on. And again, the different colored gears here, these are cryo-treated, REM polished, and they have a black oil absorbent coating applied to them. This is one of my first experiments, just to see if the cryo treatment would add strength or reliability, and it didn't. If it did at all, it didn't work on fourth. We're just putting too much torque into fourth gear, and 320 foot-pounds of torque. The factory fourth gear just doesn't have it. So in my current transmission, I've got CAPS gears out of Malaysia, and they're fantastic. So hopefully these gears are going to be much the same and they hold up, and hopefully they'll be on the market too and give us some options. Okay, so here we are back at the press. We've already got it adjusted. The bottle jack is tight, so it's ready to go. This thing's fairly well balanced and just stands on its own. I've got a little piece of scrap flat bar in here to help support the socket. It's just the way that the spacer and the gap that I had to work with is working out. So what we'll do, go ahead and start pressing this bearing on. And it should just go on with the finger and the jack, and yeah, it's going on nice and level. Again, if this bearing starts to tilt on you initially, stop, let the jack up, pull the bearing, recenter everything, maybe shift some stuff over a little bit, and try to control the bearing so that it goes straight onto the shaft. And you shouldn't feel a lot of resistance. And you should be able to bottom it out. Again, there we go. See, I got pretty good pressure on it now. Everything's spinning just the way it's supposed to. And that's it. This is done. Hold the shaft. Shouldn't fall down. Again, I don't have any real fixturing for this. If I was going to make some money off of doing transmission repair work, I'd probably invest in fixturing to make this a little bit faster. But this is it. This is a completed shaft.